Full disclosure, if you don't want to hear about infant deaths, don't listen to this podcast. Healthcare horrors. Murder. Welcome back to another episode. I can't get through it.
Welcome back to another episode of Healthcare Horrors.
Good job.
I'm Alicia Carosella, your training and development specialist.
I am Ashley Boyce, a brand specialist.
And I'm Dolan on the knobs.
Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Last time we talked about Shiro Ishii and his human experiments in biological warfare.
Yeah, not a good guy.
No, not a good thing at all.
But today we're going to talk about Amelia Dyer.
Yes, we are.
We don't have her official birthday, which makes me sad because I can't do the zodiac, but she was born in 1836.
No month either? Just
No.
1836.
No month.
Nothing.
So we're still starting in the 1800s, way back when.
Kind of like last time.
Kind of like last time.
Kind of started in the 1800s last time.
Sure enough.
Yep, so she was born in 1836, the youngest of 5. She had 3 brothers, Thomas, James, and William, and she had a sister named Anne, and they lived in the small village of Pyle Marsh, east of Bristol, England. And she's the daughter of a master shoemaker named Samuel Hobley, and her mom's name was Sarah Hobley. Amelia learned to read and write and developed a love for literature and poetry. However, her mother had mental illness due to typhus, which really put a damper on her childhood.
It did. And her love for literature and writing and reading and poetry, she's going to utilize later in her scams.
Gotta love a good scammer. So she witnessed her mom's violent fits, and she had to care for her until she died in 1848. Not really sure where her dad was, but probably just like, I'm not dealing with that. You do it.
Yeah.
So her mom died in 1848, and this really affected her deeply, and it also taught her about the symptoms that people who were affected by mental illness would exhibit.
Mm-hmm.
So her older sister, Sarah Ann, she died in 1941 at age 6, and a younger sister, also named Sarah Ann.
What?
Yeah. So it was kind of a weird situation. It was like kind of hard to follow. So she was the 5th child. And so she had 3 brothers, 1 sister, and then another sister was adopted.
Okay.
And I think it was actually like their cousin or something, but they brought her in. And so, yeah, both of her sisters died.
We're Sarah Ann, and then
another
second
Sarah
smaller
Ann.
Sarah Ann died at a few months old in 1845.
Mm-hmm.
No.
She was the...
Yes.
No, I mean like no to the names. Like
Sarah Ann.
Okay.
It was her older cousin who had an illegitimate daughter at the time who was later adopted.
Yes.
Okay. So after her mother's death, Amelia lived with her aunt in Bristol for a time before becoming an apprentice with a corset maker. And then her dad died in 1859, which at first all this is shocking, but keep in mind the life expectancy at this time was not long.
Mm-hmm.
So her older brother, Thomas, inherited the family shoe business, and at the age of 24, she becomes permanently estranged from at least one of her brothers, James, who moved into lodgings in Trinity Street, Bristol. So things are not going well in her family.
Yeah, basically after her mom died, there was just a big falling out, and everyone just kind of separated. She moved in with her aunt. And
yeah, so things just really went south. So when she is in Bristol, she married George Thomas. George was 59, and they both apparently lied about their ages on the marriage certificate to reduce the age gap and make it not look so big.
Yeah, he was 59. She was 24.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So George said that he was 48, and she said that she was 30.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm like, 18 years is still a massive gap.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think it matters at that point.
Again, different times. Who knows?
But anyways, everybody's really confused about all of this. But so she marries George Thomas, and after marrying him, she trained as a nurse. So she had contact with a midwife named Ellen Dane, who taught her an easier way to earn a living. Words are hard. In using her own home to provide lodgings for young women who had conceived illegitimately, and then farming off the babies for adoption or allowing them to die of neglect and malnutrition.
Yeah. I guess before you go further with Ellen, so like at a young age, when Amelia moves out and she's living with her aunt, she's kind of on her own. She starts working as a corset maker. It just kind of seems like at a very young age, she develops an interest in money or values money. And from a young age, she just always wants to be independent and know that she can care for herself. Did you have anything about her daughter with George?
Mm-mm.
Okay. After her and George get married, she does give birth to a daughter in 1864 named Ellen. So at this time, she's kind of torn between being a mother, like stay-at-home mom kind of thing, because also at this time, you know, being a mom and having a child, you're not going to work. But she's just in the back of her head, she's like, I need to make sure I have money because George is older. And like we just said, the life expectancy isn't very long. So if
she's probably
passes,
going to be a widow soon.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, then she, meets Ellen Dane, who talks about baby farming. And that's when she's kind of like, this is kind of an easier way to make money for me, something I can do.
And I wonder too, like if they were really in love or what this was, because when at this point in time, when your husband dies, it's not like looked fondly upon if you're even a widow, especially a widow with a child.
Right.
So I don't know, I guess I'm just curious. I got other thoughts. But so this easier way of living was that, apparently Ellen was getting caught up and had to go hang out in the U.S. for a bit. But Amelia was doing what Ellen had originally been doing, which was bringing in unmarried mothers, who often struggled with income, since the 1834 Poor Law Amendment Act had removed any financial obligation from the fathers of illegitimate children. Well, and meanwhile, they're single parents, what I was just talking about, it's stigmatized, so it's not good. And nobody's providing them any support, which led to the practice of baby farming, which individuals acted as adoption or fostering agents in return for regular payments or single upfront fees from the baby's mothers. Many businesses were set up to take in young women and care for them until they gave birth. The mothers would have to leave their unwanted babies to be looked after as nurse children. So this predicament of the parents often involved them being exploited for financial gain. So they, which is interesting because they don't have any money. So, but if the baby had well-off parents who wanted to keep the baby a secret, a single fee could be as much as 80 pounds, which back then is a lot of money. 50
Wait,
pounds.
80 pounds?
If they have good money.
Oh. Whew.
If they're rich and just don't, the standard fee is 5 pounds. But 50 pounds might be negotiated if the father of the child just wanted to, hush his involvement, I guess. So, but it was much more common for these expectant young women to be impoverished. So these women would be charged about 5 pounds.
And so I have 5 to 6 pounds at that time or maybe it's, is it at this time or was it that time? I just wrote that 5 to 6 pounds is equivalent to $600 to $1,000. So it was probably at that time. And that's a lot of money. So 50 pounds at that time, I don't know.
I'm Googling.
Weird. Okay. And 600 pounds in U.S. currency would be like around 720.
This calculator isn't doing what I want it to. Anyways, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely at that time. And like you said, these ladies don't really have the money, so I don't know where they're getting the money to put up their child, but...
I don't know, but it's probably whatever they have, or borrow or steal, or...
Mm-hmm.
Either way, what a very unfortunate situation to be in.
Right. So yeah, late 1800s, 5 to 6 pounds, equivalent to 600 to 1,000 pounds. And that was probably just the lump sum versus the weekly fee. Is that what we were talking about?
Yeah.
Like the large single payment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this was most definitely a scam, because even Ellen Dane would let the babies just die of neglect or malnourished, or she would kill them. So it's the late 1860s where Dane, like you said, does end up fleeing to the U.S. because authorities are suspicious of her activity and just killing the infants instead of actually taking care of them and putting them up for adoption.
Mm-hmm.
So Ellen Dane's out of the picture. By October 18th, 1869, Amelia's husband, George, does pass away at the age of 62. And this was kind of her fear. George ended up leaving Amelia and his daughter money, but those funds can run out, and Amelia was just nervous about not being able to provide and support herself and her daughter. So she ends up giving her daughter Ellen to another family and just really dives in headfirst to this baby farming business under pseudonames of Mrs. Harding and Mrs. Smith. And surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, I don't know, business picks up pretty quick. And in 1869, she contacts Margaret Walters. It turns out there's sadly a community of baby farmers, and she seeks the support from them. In 1870, there's an investigator that starts looking into this baby farming business in Brixton, and he looks into Mrs. Walters. He goes to her house, and they find 10 babies there. They remove 10 babies, and 5 of the babies don't make it. So this is a media sensation, and Margaret Walters ends up getting hung for her crimes of baby farming.
Well, I think that's fair.
Yes, absolutely. So this kind of freaks Amelia out a little bit, rightfully so. So in 1871, at age 31, Amelia decides to quit baby farming in fear that she'll have the same fate as Margaret Walters. She ends up returning to a nursing career at an asylum, and that did not pay well. It paid her about £1 per month. She apparently found relief in restraining patients and was fired due to aggression. So in 1872, William Dyer comes into the picture. He's 27 years old, and he works at a sugar factory, and they end up getting married. So she now becomes Amelia Dyer. Amelia ends up getting her daughter Ellen back from the family she left her with. And then shortly after that, she gives birth to a second child, Mary Ann, and a third child, William. And things are going pretty well for the family. Until 1877, when William Dyer gets laid off and it's really hard to secure a job. So Amelia decides to return to baby farming. So at this point, Amelia will have pregnant women come over to their house, deliver their babies, and she would often smother them right out of the womb and claim them to be a stillborn for the death certificates. Some mothers maybe did not know what Amelia was doing. Some mothers did know what kind of service Amelia was providing, and they still went to her and they still paid her for her help or services.
Yeah, I think she was rather impatient at this point and decided it was too expensive and inconvenient to just starve a child or overdose it with opium. So
to care for it for, at least a month or so. Something. It's terrible either way. So she did have babies to take care of, though. She would often have about 10 babies to care for at a time.
It's a lot of babies.
I don't have one.
I'm telling you, as someone who has raised a baby.
Yes.
10 is a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'll just imagine I have 10 dogs. That makes me happy.
That would be, honestly,
that would be
not
crazy.
That bad.
Okay, it'd be crazy, but good crazy.
Yeah, they're really cute and soft, and they go potty outside.
Yes. Okay, so 10 babies to take care of. She does decide to not kill them as quickly to avoid suspicion. So she slows down a little bit, and she sedates the babies with Godfrey's cordial, aka Mother's Friend,
aka
a patented syrup containing opium. And I am just really surprised that's not a cocktail somewhere on some menu. It probably is in the world.
I think that you just create it and make money.
We should do this. Patent it right now.
All these entrepreneurs, and here's your opportunity.
This is it. It's my big break. So if Godfrey's cordial was not available, she would also turn to alcohol or opioids to do the trick. And Amelia herself developed an opioid addiction, which made her careless, and she started gaining suspicion. Authorities end up going to Amelia's home and notice that something wasn't quite right. The conditions of the home were very poor, and it was also very quiet. If you're going to have 10 babies, I would imagine at least one of them would be crying.
They are high as hell.
Yeah. They're just,
or drunk.
Yeah. So it's very quiet, and the authorities end up finding one dead baby, and they leave her home with the child. And at this point, Amelia's freaking out, and she decides to try and commit suicide by overdosing herself with opioids, some sort of syrup that she has. She does fail, and authorities come back and bring her in to custody on accounts of neglect. And at this point in time, she is 42 years old. And her husband and children are there the entire time, but
this is going on?
Yeah. But I think he kind of chooses to remain oblivious to what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So she ends up serving 6 months of hard labor in a prison. She's chastised and hated. She's called a baby killer. In 1881, she is out of incarceration, and the family moves to another nearby town for a new start.
Let's talk about how her incarceration was very short.
Well, she was only brought in for neglect, not murder. So that's why. Mm-hmm.
Annoying. But whatever. It was 6 months of hard labor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they call it hard labor, not even like jail.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the family, like I said, wasn't fully aware of what Amelia's hidden agenda with the baby farm business was. William, at this point, is working in a brewery, and Amelia decides to take a break from baby farming because they're in a new town for their new start, and she decides to open a general store, which ends up being a lot harder than she thought because apparently there was a lot of competition in the town. The store ends up closing, and it kind of starts to put them in a little bit of a debt. In 1884, she did what she could do best and goes back to baby farming. She puts more ads in the paper for her child care and adoption services. So under more pseudonyms, she's looking to adopt from more of the higher class clientele this time. And William, I just don't see how he's not kind of catching on to what's going on. So I think he's just choosing to remain oblivious. There is one instance where a wealthy client leaves her baby with Amelia, and Amelia did not waste any time smothering it. And a month or so later, the mother comes back to see her baby, and Amelia ends up bringing her a different child. And I don't know, what would someone do if someone brought you a different child in the hospital? Would you know, right away, this is not my baby? The woman knew right away because the baby did not have a specific birthmark that she was looking for. So after a few more weeks of the mother visiting Amelia and looking for her child, Amelia ends up telling the mother that the baby has just been adopted out. So this was a very close call and meant that it was time to move again, basically. And William even ends up claiming to be a widower to try and just throw off authorities. So I don't have too much detail on that, but as their children grew up, they even caught on to the amount of babies that would come into the home and leave dead, or the amount of pregnant mothers that would come into the home and leave without a baby. In October 1891, up until this point, Amelia is pretty good at keeping her cool and maintaining a calm composure. But that wealthy woman that came back to look for her baby and they move, well, the wealthy woman ends up finding Amelia again and with authorities, but they don't really have any evidence that Amelia did anything with her baby. So the mom tried, but there was no evidence to put her away. But this still got Amelia so paranoid that she goes into a psychotic episode and threatens to kill herself. William is very concerned and ends up bringing a doctor into the picture. Amelia gets admitted to the Somerset and Bath Lunatic Asylum for 2 months till January 12th, 1892. So was she admitted to the asylum due to stress and drugs and her meltdown, or was it just a way to escape authorities?
She drank 2 bottles of laudanum.
Oof.
But her tolerance, not her pain tolerance, her tolerance for opiates is so high that it didn't kill her. And also at this point, I think she was no longer having formal birth certificates signed, and that she was just now disposing of the baby's bodies, and things are just getting very risky.
Yes. So she gets out of the asylum, she reunites with her family, and they move back to one of the previous towns that they lived in, where she killed a dozen more babies, and she starts back up on drugs.
She does this for a long time.
She really does. So history repeats itself when another mother comes back asking to see her baby. Amelia says it's been adopted out, and this kind of triggers the whole thing again, where she gets admitted back into an asylum. And then 1894, she's released, and by this point, William has had enough, and he ends up leaving her. And I think at this point, the children are old enough to where they're moved out. So for the next few months, Amelia is doing a lot of moving around. She's kind of in and out of asylums, not doing great. Her daughter, Marianne, and her husband end up moving back in with Amelia because they're not doing so well financially, and they actually, at least Marianne, decides to get in on the baby farming business with Amelia. So in order to avoid bringing in coroners and death certificates and stuff, she does decide to start disposing of the babies' bodies in the River Thames. Also, instead of smothering the children, she decides to start strangling them with tape. So she's changing up her method, and it's a little more twisted, as if it wasn't already.
God, do not like this woman.
Mm-hmm. By March 1896, an infant's body is discovered in the river. It's wrapped in paper and has tape around its neck. And on the paper is an address. So authorities, of course, look into the address. It's Amelia's address. And before knocking on the door, they decide to observe the household for a little while, and they notice the amount of mothers that come and go. So by April 3rd, 1896, she is arrested on suspicion of murder, and more babies' bodies are discovered in the river. Amelia ends up confessing once she realizes that there's no way she can get out of this, and she also wants to make sure she can save her family, since Marianne decided to get in on this. So the jury ends up deliberating for 5 minutes before sentencing Amelia to the same fate Margaret Walters endured years ago, death by hanging. So at least 400 children, 400 babies she killed over 30 years' time.
Yeah, I mean, it literally just kept going and going and going and going.
Yep, all they had to do was move around a little bit. But yeah, just at this point in time, why are there so many, birth control wasn't really a thing back then, I suppose.
No, definitely not. And, society, the pressure of society. But I'm like, man.
Yeah. Crazy. What's up, Dolan?
I hated every minute of that.
It's so sad.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's really sad when you kill adults too, but babies have no fighting chance.
Right.
They're babies.
Yeah.
Pick on someone your own size. I mean, don't, but if you're going to.
If you're going to.
Make it a fair fight.
Yeah. Babies and animals. It's not fair.
No. That is really a lot. I mean, I guess, man, the pressure from society must have been insurmountable.
Yeah.
There's not a single thing in the world you could say to me that would make me ever participate in that. Don't care.
Yeah. So you're going to be shunned from society, but you're okay with
murder.
But a lot of these mothers, some of them knew what was really happening, but a lot of these mothers just thought their child was going to get put up for adoption.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Dang, those were two bummers.
Yeah.
This week and last week.
Dang.
Yeah.
Dang. Not that any of this is lighthearted, like I said, but dang.
Yeah. Yeah. It's no fun talking about
my feelings are hurt.
The babies. Okay. Positive.
All right. What's a positive? Dolan installed brand new shades in the studio.
That was a while ago.
I know, but
we
were talking about it.
It does set the mood for podcasting, I guess.
But we were talking about it, so.
Yeah.
I like having them open.
They're not that long. It wasn't that long ago.
It's been a while.
It's been over a year, probably.
No way.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Time flies when you're talking about murder.
I know, but they're always open, so I don't notice them.
Yeah.
That's because I usually come in and open them because I like natural lighting, and when we're sitting in here, I like to see the people walking in and out. And then Dolan comes in here and closes them, and I'm like,
every time.
Why?
Because I like nobody to see me.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
The drama.
Well, that's kind of fun because before we started recording, Joel walks in and makes a weird face.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, where have you been?
Here's a positive.
Uh-oh.
I've got one for you guys.
All right, we're ready.
Proof, a true crime podcast by Red Marble Media, just uncovered some new evidence that freed 2 guys from prison who have been there for 25 years.
That is positive.
So they found a case where there were 3 guys playing Russian roulette. One guy shoots himself.
Mm-hmm.
Both guys have the same story, say that he killed himself. No autopsy was done. No, there wasn't really a fair trial. They went in and pretty much the judge and everybody had decided, no, these guys are weird. They killed their friend and they're trying to get away with it. So they got put into prison, spent 25 years there. These podcasters decided
Dang.
they were going to go and by the way, when this all happened, they were 15. So, yeah. So they go in and they start interviewing like different people who are on the case. They interviewed them. They got a pass to interview them, I think.
This really
from my
sounds
reading.
familiar.
Yeah, and they uncovered that it really was a suicide through all this. So they've been released. So this all happened in October of 1996, and they're finally home.
Wow.
Yep.
The
They
power
couldn't-
of talking about things
Mhm.
is amazing.
They couldn't check for gun residue on the. Well, I guess they all had gun
Well, they
residue.
didn't even
on
do
their
an
hands.
autopsy
Yeah.
report either.
All of this stuff was not done. Like,
Oh.
You actually only have gun residue if you fired it.
Oh.
yeah. So
Like if a bullet actually fires. So if you're playing Russian roulette and it
Then
doesn't,
it doesn't
fire,
fire.
then
there are a lot of
it shouldn't, in theory.
there are a lot of unclosed cases though where it's like they didn't do any of the DNA testing because it wasn't available, or like,
because it's too backlogged, or it's too much work,
Yeah,
or
or-
that's expensive.
or the scene is like
Trampled on.
well, it's too like how do you want to say it? It's like too obvious.
Mhm.
Why would they spend the money and the resources to do an autopsy? Like it's obvious what
because
happened.
science.
Yeah. So interesting.
Not everything
Kudos
is what it
to
seems. Good for them.
yeah. Kudos to the podcasters over at Proof. I think
That's
their
cool.
names are
That is really cool. They really
yeah.
love that.
Susan Simpson and Jacinda Davis
Mm.
for helping that along. And those 2 guys are free. They were released on the 19th of December. So,
Wow.
Oh, Merry Christmas.
Couple
Just in
months
time
ago.
for them to
yep.
get home for the holidays.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, that's cool. If you want to go and listen to another true crime podcast,
Yeah.
Proof. That's one for you.
I'll have to
That's
check it
cool.
out.
Me too.
Oh,
Always
yeah.
looking for podcasts. All right, next time, who we got?
Next time, we're going to talk about William Palmer. So we're going to stay in Britain, and he was known for illegal abortion clinics.
So it's not getting any better, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to get worse. Buckle up.
Don't do anything Amelia Dyer would do. It's terrible, and humans are so icky.
Preach.
And murder.
Murder.
Thank you for listening to Healthcare Horrors, brought to you by Atlas MedStaff. Just a reminder, we are not healthcare professionals. We are just fans of true crime, talking about some of history's darkest moments in healthcare. Stay tuned, stay healthy, and stay safe. Healthcare Horrors.
Murder.